This is my Bixler 2. I thought I'd get back into flying, start off easy. I've got myself a flight simulator, but now I'm going to build this Bixler 2. Let's get into this. So here's an instruction manual. Now I said an instruction manual because it is not the instruction manual. That's on the internet, so I cannot give Hobby King a salute for this, I'm afraid, because I had to print it. Let's get that out of the way. So this is how it looks in the box, and the first thing we get out is a carbon rod. This is obviously for the wings. Well, this is one of the wings. Now they come with servos installed already for the aileron, but for the flaps, the cutouts there and the hinges are in place, but there's no servo, so you actually have to put that in yourself. So let's take a look at this. And I'm totally unprepared because I haven't got a knife or anything. So there's the wing. There's the second wing, which is pretty much like the first wing, except it sticks out the other side of the fuselage. I will be putting flaps on this. Ooh, this is stuck. Won't come out. There we go. So here's the other wing. Now, what I don't quite understand is on the ailerons they haven't put hinges, it's just the foam hinge. But on the flaps they've got hinges, which is a bit bizarre because you're going to be using your ailerons far more than your flaps. But there it is, looks good. And then we have the tail, fin and rudder. When I do my next one I'll have to make sure I've got a knife. Ah, blowing these bags are hard. Now the rudder, lovely little rudder, I'll do close up to these a bit later. It's hinged. Yep. Proper hinges. And the tailplane is exactly the same. Can't remember what I called it. I called it the fin. So I call it the fin and rudder. And this is the tailplane and elevator. And this is hinged as well. It comes with the horns already in place. It feels quite smooth. It's not a rough foam, it's quite smooth. Now I've added two servos, two 9-gram servos, there for the flaps. Well, we have a pretty nice prop here. I cannot for the life of me see what size it is. I'll put it in the, I'll do a bit of editing, but I'll put it in the description below. And then there's all the bits that you use. Oh, it's coming with a screwdriver. So it's got its own little screwdriver, quite a nice one, not too cheap at all. And then we've got a Y lead. I believe that's for the flaps. So I'll probably, although having said that, it's got two Y leads. So one must be for the ailerons, which I understand, because they'll go in opposite directions. The other would be for the flaps, but I'll have to reverse one of the servos. Then there's some more clevises and horns here for the, actually I don't know what they're for. Yeah, these are for the flaps, and you've got the prop adapter and some Velcro probably for your battery and some other things. I'm not sure what they're for. And then we have the fuselage. Now this is, I believe it's a new Bixler 2, and that's why it's got the all silver canopy. Some people like it, some people don't. Take it or leave it, I'm not really bothered. It's just a hatch to cover the internal workings. You can paint it black anyway, you can rough it up a bit, do a bit of black on it. But apart from that, it looks really cool. It's got servos already built in for your rudder and your elevator, which run along the length of the fuselage. Now I have seen other people say that these can come out, so I'll be putting some of that reinforced, fiberglass reinforced tape along the side here to make sure they stay in place. It's got a plastic skid here at the bottom for belly landings, and it's got a carbon rod that they've already put in to give it some support. But I've also been told these can break at the nose across here, so I will definitely be putting some carbon rods either on the outside across here or try and bury them inside. I don't know. It's got a 20 amp speed controller, and look at that. Got an XT60, a good old hobby key. Yeah, so I look forward to building that. And this will be my first aircraft back into flying after 10 years. The box empty. So I'm not going to read all the stats out. What I'll do is I'll take a picture. But it has got a 1.5 metre wingspan, which is quite a nice size wingspan. So I just wanted to show you this bit. This is the flap here, and all you do is you install the horn, which pushes straight through and glues in, and then you cut a piece of foam that's locking the flap in place, and then it's free to move. And of course the flap is obviously level with the wing surface, and then it comes down only. So this is where the servo's going. And this wire runs along, and as you can see, even when it's extended, this needs a servo extension. So what I've had to do is to cut out this part which glues into the wing, which is part of the structural support. I've had to cut this hole out here so the extension drops down into the fuselage. This is the flap. Okay, and from the same angle, if we take a look at the ailerons, see if we can get a better angle of the ailerons. Of course I'll put Expo into those. They're not quite lined up, but again a bit of trimming or change it at the clevis. The other thing I wanted to show was that I've put reinforcing tape across the servo and along this part that I've now glued in place just to hold it, because the main spar goes through there as well. If I come out, there you are, you can see I've run it right across here. I've also got the tape on this servo that was already installed. And this one, and that's that side of the wing done. I'll get on with the other side. Okay, one small thing which is quite useful, the screwdriver that came with this kit has been magnetised. I didn't do it, it already was. So when you're dealing with tiny little screws like this, you just pick them up with it. Now you can of course magnetise your own screwdriver, and the way you do that is you get a magnet or another piece of metal bar and you strike the screwdriver shaft, and over time it becomes magnetised. But what this allows you to do is, as you can see, you just literally pop the screw on the end and it won't come off, and then you can put it into your wherever you need it to go. And it's so much easier than messing around. And there we are. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but I spotted that this servo arm has actually got a split right down this side of it. So do watch out for that type of thing when you buy servos. This arm was already installed on the servo, and had I not had to clip part of it off, because it's going into a wing and not flat into the body, I might not have noticed that. So do check your servos. So here's the second wing. So I'll put my servo tester in, see how the flap responds. And the aileron. Yeah, it looks fine. Obviously adjustment will be necessary, and I'll also have to put in a servo reverser on one of the flaps. Or I could program it in through my DX9. As with the other wing, after putting in the piece that holds the spar in place and covers up the servo wires, you glue that in. It's just a foam strip. I've added this reinforced tape to cover the joins, and also to make sure the servos aren't going to pop out. Sorry if there's any shaking in this, but I thought I'd like to show you the full wing. Believe it or not, I cut this bit of foam out by accident. I thought I was cutting the slot in the bottom, I cut it in the top. I might pad that, fix that with a piece of spare foam I've got. But that's the whole wing. Then this middle section, here is where I had to cut out some slots. These are the original leads that were on the ailerons. The flaps, the leads on the servos ended here, so I've had to cut this out so I can put the extensions on these and run them into the fuselage. These will also clip onto extensions and run into the fuselage because there's plenty of room. Yeah, and that's it. These are water decals and they're useless, honestly. The reason there's a gap here, this should be a solid black line. The reason there's a gap is as I took this out, it just ripped the transfers. So what you do, you get some normal sellotape or packing tape, put it over the transfer and then just rip it off, and it comes off nice and clean. But there's nothing stopping these come off. What I'm going to do, I'm going to get some black plastic tape and take these off and put actually black tape over so it's a continuous bar. Not bad at all. So next do the tail feathers. Oh, this is quite interesting. In the other bit of the video I had these wings together, but they were actually fractionally out with a gap down here. Now that was because this middle spar, the glue was a bit thick at the far end and it was pushing it slightly forward just by 1mm, but it meant that the locking screws that go through these holes here and here couldn't connect to the part on the opposite wing. As you can see here, if I open them up, they've got these black bits where the screws goes into. So I've had to actually trim just this piece of the foam out, took the spar out, trimmed this down, so now they will come together perfectly flush. And when it's in the airframe, a pin goes up through the airframe, through these holes, and the hole here, and then you can just screw it up with a screwdriver and it tightens it all up. So I had to balance the prop a bit, and I think I've got it just about right, so I tend to start with it a couple of spins. And there you see it's resting, not quite level, but it's pretty good. But the way I tend to balance a prop is very, very slowly. So I use a precision scalpel blade, and I literally scrape away at the heavy blade, fraction at a time, to try and get it to balance. Now, as you can see, this one's slightly down on the right, just very slightly down on the right. See if that does that again. Yeah. So what I've done on the right, I've added a piece of this reinforced tape. So what I now do is I can slowly cut away just small slithers of that tape, because the tape doesn't weigh much at all, so we're talking a very, very small amount. So I've just taken away a slither, put it back on and give it a spin. And of course, once it's on the motor and it's running, you'll get a feel for it, see if there's any vibrations. That's pretty good, I'm quite happy with that. So here's a little interesting thing. This is the tailplane and obviously the elevator. This is the elevator push rod. No, this is the rudder push rod. This is the elevator push rod. So it has to go between them. Now this has a raised piece here which fits into this groove. The problem is, or the concern is, if you push it in so it sits fully in the groove so there's no gap, don't know if you can see that, as you slide it in, there's no gap. The problem you will have if you glued that is this wouldn't fit, because this has a little shoe on it which goes into the slot and then it comes down. And I don't know if you saw, that moved back slightly. So what I think you need to do is glue this in first, because it gives a stop position for when you glue this in. And when I say first, they're within minutes of each other, so the whole lot will go together. Whoops, the whole lot will go together in one go. And then you can see this is the rudder, servo, and the aileron servo is on the underside. So that's going to be the next job. But before I do that, I've got to make sure these servos are centered. And I'm using a servo tester. It's quite an old one, so I'm kicking everything around. It's a Ritmax Mini. I've double-sided taped Ritmax battery onto the back, and all you do is plug that in when you want the power, he says. And then what you can do, you can cycle centered. You can cycle through different positions, and you can manually take it to its extreme limits. And that's why you were hearing the grinding, I call it, where the servos can't go any further. That's because I was pressing these actual buttons, which takes it to its maximum movement. And you can have up to 2 servos in at any one time. So quite a nice, neat little tester. I haven't been able to find any these days. I mean, it's got to be at least 20 years old, but it's still working perfectly. And the glue I'm using to attach the foam parts is this Pour, made in Germany. It's really quite good, and it acts a bit like a contact adhesive. I suppose it is a contact adhesive, where you spread it evenly on both surfaces, give it 10-15 minutes to cure, and then put them together. The problem is, as you put them together, they bind instantly, almost quicker than super glue. So you've got to get it just about right. So I'm giving it 10 minutes, and there's still a bit of movement in there to be able to get them in and push them down firm. But it bonds beautifully, especially for this EPO foam. Really good. I also have some, it happens to be the brand Zap, but this is Foam Safe CA and the Foam Safe Kicker for the CA. And they're basically the 2 glues I'm using to do all the work I need to do on it. Okay, so I've glued these together now. You can see it's the level here showing that this is nice and level, and the right angle square on this side is showing me that the fin is nice and straight. I've just got to leave those to cure a bit longer now. Okay, so we're just about completed everything. I'll just run it through its final build test. So these are mid rates.
High rates.
These are high rates. You can see I've got a bit of rudder mix in there with the ailerons.
Low rates.
Low rates are the rates they suggest, which is 14mm movement either side, up and down of the wing. And I've got my flaps.
Landing flaps.
which I've slowed down.
Flaps up. Landing flaps. Flaps up.
The elevator.
Mid-rate. High rate.
There's your high rates. They might need a bit of trimming a bit later.
Low rates.
Got throttle cut working.
Timer start.
So as you can see here, I have my throttle up full and it's not working.
Throttle cut off. Start. Start.
So if we do a quick test.
Throttle cut on. Timer start.
Not a hard build, but if anyone tells you you can build it in a couple of hours, they're lying. All in all, it must have taken me 8-9 hours, maybe a day, spread over 2 days. The hard bit, I suppose, is putting those wings together. It's a bit of a Heath Robinson method. They've got overlapping flanges in the centre of the fuselage, and you've got to feed 4 wires through past these posts into the front. So I added extension leads onto every wire in the wing, and then taped them so they wouldn't come apart and fed those through to the front. Centre of gravity is pretty good. I don't know if I can demonstrate that or not. I will try. So at the moment it's balancing 350 millimeters from the nose. See, that's pretty neutral. I can change the position of the battery because the battery's by no means as far forward as it can go. I'm using a 2200 milliamp hour 3-cell battery. I'll do a quick walk round of it so you can get a look from all angles. I'll just turn it over. There we are, just like that. Something I'd like to show is just here. I'll put a cocktail stick, I don't know if you can see it, just there, and a cocktail stick just there. And they're 1 steel ruler width away from the fuselage. See, by that. And they're where the centre of gravity needs to be, plus or minus 8 millimeters. So you can either have it nose heavy or tail heavy, but that's the neutral point in the position I've got the battery. These are the holes. There's one here and one here where you put tiny little thin wood screws almost, but they're very thin and narrow, and they screw down through the 2 wings. Because the wings overlap, the left and the right wings have overlapping flanges, and that's what holds it in place. And to me it's a little bit Heath Robinson, but it should work. And there it is, a Hobby King Bixler 2, all ready to go. I had to look up how to put the prop on because the prop needs to face a certain way depending on the rotation of the motor. So this one is being put on right. You can see the bit of tape there I used to get the balancing 100% correct, and it rotates this way, and here's a spoon, as it's called in the prop, which grabs the air. And it's got plenty of thrust forward, so it's not underpowered at all. So it should be good. Should be good to get her up in the air. There might be a little trimming needed. You can see here there's just tiny little fractions of things that are different. Now what I noticed here on the back on the elevator is this side is perfectly level, but there's a slight warp in it, so this side is slightly down. But I'm hoping it's so trivial that it's not going to actually affect the flying. See there? The trim's just not quite right. I could try and heat it, but I don't want to mess with it too much. Yeah, it's good. So I'm happy. And I'll try and get some flying footage when I take her out, which might be for a while yet. I've only just finished my application to the flying club. But thanks for watching, stay safe, and I hope to see you all on another video. Cheers!